Right, now that we have this file built out using all of these div tags to divide everything and giving them classes, and I will scroll this in a little bit if you want to copy this if you weren't following along in that last video. And there's just some basic text and image. You kind of get the idea of what's going on here. But now I want to use some of these semantic elements that we have that are out here on W3 Schools. These are available in HTML5, which is what we're using now. And they weren't available before, and that's why divs with classes and IDs were the preferred route, to make sure that you kind of had things sectioned out into different pieces that you could style differently. So now back on my page, we could even look at that. I can style page header, body content, section header. So dot, page header, dot, body content, dot, section header. Remember, because these are all classes that I gave it, we didn't give those IDs, so we're using that dot and then the class name. We have section content and footer. All right. So dot section content and dot footer. And a lot of times when things were set up this way, people would have a style sheet that was consistent and would always make their stuff look the same, because they want to keep that branding and that same look and feel across their pages. So they would always use these same classes for these different sections that they created, and then have styles that did something specifically for that. So here, maybe the page header, I want it to have a background color of, we'll say black, and then have the text color be white. And then the body content, I want to maybe change the font size so that it shows a little bit larger inside of that element. That should be lowercase. Font size 1.25 EMs, and we'll get into those different sizes that we can use. And my section headers, well, in my page header, I'm going to go ahead and font size colon 1.5 EMs. Then my section headers, I don't want them to be that big, but I need them to be a little bit larger than the body content. So here I'm going to go with font size 1.35 EMs. Then my section content, maybe I want to set it off just a little bit. I'll give it a different background color. We'll go with purple and make the color yellow. That's probably going to look awful. And then my footer class, I'm going to make sure that it's taking up the entire width, so width 100%, which being a div, it should already do anyway. Give that a background color of, I'm going to use the black and white. So black, color white. And maybe I want to make sure that that has an italic look to it. So then I'm going to use the font style property. Font style italic, so that everything in that footer is italicized. Now when I save this, I refresh my page, I can see I'm getting some changes on this page. I'll take the window full screen so we can kind of see. We can see the italics down here. We can see this background color. These headings. We can see that this heading, which has the class page heading, is larger than these section headings. So now, looking at this, in our index.html, we can change these elements to some of these semantic elements that we see here on W3 Schools. They do have different purposes. You can find this page, I'll link to it, and be able to see what exactly these different pieces are used for. For example, here instead of div class page header, I can use the header element. So I'm going to change this div to header. And this one is the body content. So I'm going to change that one to section. Set that as the section element. Section. Then inside of this section, this is also being used as a header, so I'm going to change that to header. This div is section content. So this is a section within the section. But this is also specific to this specific thing that's being talked about. So let's see the article element. The article element specifies independent self-contained content, where this is some self-contained content, because this could possibly stand alone. It would make enough sense to have we have this section and then this header and this header. We might need to add an additional header for this section itself, but I could place this inside of an article or another section. I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with section. It's going to do the same thing that an article does, but because an article is self-contained, without the reference to the rest of the page, this wouldn't make as much sense. So I'm going to keep it as a section. So here, this is a header, and then another section, because we know that these are sections within this section that's something else, and they're all different sections of this body. Here I'm going to use the footer element, so we can see that's one of the elements that's available here. Here's a basic idea of how some of that works. And then this footer here, then I'm going to save that, and inside each of inside these sections I have headers. Inside the body I have a header, so we can style those differently, and we will look at how we can select those specifically without having to add classes and IDs to them in another video. But this is how you could make this make more sense without having to add classes to them. So here I know that this is a header, this is a section, this is a header that's inside the section. Here's another section that doesn't have a header. Here's another header and a section. And this header and section could be inside of its own section if I wanted it to. Now, if I had this in a way that instead of this course, I could say CIS-130-H101, And then that is, in fact, I mean, that's enough information that I could put this inside of an article instead. So I'm going to go ahead and change that so that it's an article, because this would make just as much sense without being on this page. It could just be Aaron Wright. Aaron is the instructor of CIS 130 H101, and that makes sense. Where like this NKM 104 saying that NKM 104 is the classroom used when we meet in person, that doesn't give a lot of context, so it may not make sense outside of this page. So here, when I save this, we're going to lose all of this extra styling that we gave this. Oh, let me take this class footer, this class out, save this. And now we've lost all of that extra styling that we had in the in another video. We'll take a look at how we can select those specifically without the use of those class names.